Hello and welcome to Back of the Net and Beyond, where today I'm going to be speaking to former Manchester United, Leeds, Sheffield United, and Watford professional footballer Danny Webber. How's it going, Webbs? You all right?
All good, Danny. Yeah, no complaints. Thank you, mate.
Good stuff. Long time no see.
I know, mate. We've got a rich history. We go back 24 years.
Yeah.
24 years to when we were at Lillishall together. So yeah, long time, mate. Long time.
Crazy, mate.
You know a lot of my past. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Nah, it's definitely a good thing. No skeletons in your closet, mate. So how's life at the minute then? Like, kind of in terms of what you're doing now. If you want to just let everyone know kind of your day-to-day life and what you're involved in.
Yeah. So obviously finished playing sort of 4 years ago at Salford, 3.5, 4 years ago. Now I'm an agent, so that takes up the bulk of what I do. So I decided to come onto this side of the fence, if you like, and impart some of my good, bad, and indifferent experiences and help the lads. When you can see what road they're going down, good, bad, and indifferent. If they're doing very well, to keep them on that sort of path, and if they're struggling a little bit, to be able to help them to point them in the right direction. Alongside that, I went and got my UEFA B license, UEFA A license, to have a look at it from a coach's point of view. And I do a lot of stuff in the media as well. So I speak as a pundit. I do certain things for MUTV, different, BBC, Sky at times, Talk Sports and Five Lives, World Service, and whoever will listen to me, really. Yeah.
Wow, that's massive. So obviously it sounds like you've got a lot going on there. And it's kind of, you've covered all bases. So you said, like, because obviously as we're growing up, we all had agents and stuff. And sometimes an agent's only there, back in the day, I'm talking about past experience, sometimes only there when maybe there's a sniff of you getting a move and then suddenly they're on the phone all the time. But it seems like nowadays, especially how you just mentioned there, it's more of a well-rounded kind of service that agents are providing. So not only on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. So players' well-being and kind of trying to push them in the right direction. Obviously, it helps when it's coming from someone like yourself who's had a sustained career at a higher level, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But again, so you're an agent and you're looking after players, but then you're also in the media and you're seeing things from behind the screen as well. So you've got that aspect to obviously add to your clients. And also, you mentioned that you're obviously a coach as well. So you're seeing things from all kind of facets there, on the pitch, off the pitch, behind the screen. So how does that bode for you? Because obviously that must resonate well with your clients.
I think it's I look at it and I think every player wants something different. So you're a fit for some and not a fit for others. Certain people think they know certain things and do know certain things, and others, everybody has their different demands. So you're not everybody's cup of tea, regardless. But my outlook on it was, I had a fair few people asking me to come and work for them, with them, when I was at the back end of my career.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I know the playing side of it. I've got a hell of a lot of contacts. My generation of people will start coming to the end, so they'd be going into the coaching roles and the managerial roles and that kind of thing. And with my experiences, and I say good, bad, and indifferent because they're not all good. You feel like you've got a lot to offer. But at first, I didn't want to be an agent. I was like, absolutely no chance, and that's because of the stigma attached to it. It's got a bad. I think agents in any industry, in property, if you're an estate agent, it's like, whoa,
100%. Yeah.
Thing you put agent next to it, unless you're James Bond, it's something very different. Do you know what I mean? People don't rate you. So I thought I was like that. I thought maybe not. And I looked at it for a while. But whilst I was doing that, I thought, how about I look at football from a sort of 360 point of view? So go and do my badges. Do I want to coach? Do I want to manage? Because there are obviously avenues you can go down.
Yeah.
So I thought I learned a lot by doing my badges. Whether I use that every day or not, by getting on the grass, is something different. But I learned a lot. And then obviously in the media at the very beginning, I was new to it all. So seeing it from the coach's point of view, having been a player, seeing it from that point of view, then seeing it from the media's point of view, and now seeing it with an agent's hat on, I can see a lot of angles that I never saw before. As a player, I realise why things happened more so in my career that you think you're in control of where you're not. And I see the bigger picture now. The machine that works a lot faster than any one little piece within it, and that's all we are at the end of the day. So football's a huge machine that works, and within that you're trying to keep the human element, because that's what is actually the glue that keeps it all together. But there are so many working parts to it, and the money that's coming to the game now is immense, and it's trying to keep people with the correct focus, and realizing, as Sir Alex used to say to me, listen, money's a byproduct of you doing a good job. Don't focus on the money, focus on doing a good job, and money comes as a result of that. And I think that gets lost often, if I'm honest.
Yeah, definitely does. And you made some good points there. I mean, so in terms of, when I think of agents, I just think of them like buzzing around like on the motorway and at training grounds and watching games. So like, I'm assuming that's kind of still the case. What is your like day-to-day life? Like, if you want to just talk us through your average day.
Yeah, I mean, no 2 days are the same, but you have to be at games. You know, that's important. You know, if you're committing to lads and you're sort of saying you're going to help them with their development, or, you know, feedback and that kind of thing. Yes, you can't get to every game that everybody's playing in, but you have to share your time around. You have to be able to watch games. The other games, you have scouts that will give you the feedback, and it's actually nice sometimes to get other people's feedback. But, you know, you spend a lot of time on the phone. You know, a lot of gaining clubs, speaking to clubs, what they need, what they don't need, what's the position of your player within that football club, because it always changes. And, you know, just making sure that you're on top of everything, that alongside making sure that the legal side, the financial side, the support side, the mental health side, and everything that the player needs are in place. You know, whether you have that in-house or you partner with other companies to make sure you've got the best practice. So it's my day varies. I could wake up one day, take the kids to school. I've got 4 kids amidst all of this.
Wow.
You know, so take the kids to school, and then it's try and fit in some form of gym. But while you're doing it, you've got your AirPods in, and you speak on the phone at times, and you know, you're always on the go. I think my missus is spewing a lot of the time, because so random. It's so random, the goal, that it's not just like, okay, 5 o'clock comes and you shut off. So that's my typical day's random. But I try and get to a number of games a week where I can. Number of meetings, and as you say, it requires a lot of miles. That's not just in the UK. You have to fly to places. You have to be around Europe to different clubs, because it's all actively. And I do, you know, amidst all that, I do a lot of stuff in Colombia. So I go to Colombia, work with an agency over there who basically navigate the Colombian market, because it's a very different market to the UK, and help young players over there with education, and then bringing them to Europe to give them a platform, because the Colombian market is, there's some good raw talent, but there's not as much structure as there is in Europe. And sometimes if the boys miss the key development years, I'm talking your late teens to, you know, that kind of time, where you're sort of 16 to 20, they can miss an opportunity where they might have had an opportunity before. So I think I work a partner with a company over there, Pro Ball Group, who are very good. So it's a mixed bag, and on top of that, as you say, we as a group we do some property stuff, as you said there. So that would include land, getting involved with land, planning permission, you know, and that kind of thing. So a mixed bag. I love being busy. I think from the moment I'm active, and the moment I go to bed, I try to switch off. But you know, if I wake up in the middle of the night, something comes into my head, and I'm researching it or looking at it on my iPad or whatever. And I'm conscious from the player's point of view that I make sure I'm attentive, and they get what they need out of it. And everybody's different. Some people want a lot, some people want very little, and it's not a one size fits all case. And I don't want to look after 30, 40 players. It's not in my remit, and it's just not what I want to do. But the ones that I do look after, I want to make sure that they get everything from me, and I'm available to them. So I'm always at the end of a phone if need be, or a drive away from them to come and help them out.
That's massive. I think it's safe to say you've got your fingers in a lot of pies there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the key to it is working with good people, Danny.
Yeah.
I think you can't do everything yourself. You really
Yeah,
can't.
true.
My focus is the players and the agency 99% of the time. And then at the media side of it as well, I enjoy and I focus, you know, on that to a certain extent. But the rest of it is having good people around you, making sure that you've got structures in place and other people to partner with. And that you know, a big thing for me is trust. The people you trust to go out and do the work, and then you can help put the pieces together at times. But you know, it's not my day to day is making sure the players are sorted out.
You mentioned there that you didn't want to have like a whole bunch of players to look after. So is it just a handful that you're looking after at the moment?
That's right, yeah, handful, and then I'd help football clubs as well. So there's times where clubs need, especially during COVID, where people are laying people off and we don't have the extended sort of recruitment team, or you know, certain people don't have that kind of budget, or just don't know an area. So where you may be stronger or may be able to identify players is where we come into play as well. So we can be an extended scouting network for clubs, you know, offer scouting reports, do advice, you know, give them advice and so on. And no two clubs recruit the same, so everybody requires something different. We're very active on the likes of Instat and Y-Scout as well. So we have analysts that look at players and analyse and break it down, because that's a big part of the game going forward. Again, like I say, I personally can't do the lot, but the team I have around me are very, very good.
Good stuff. And you mentioned there you work for MUTV, do some BBC work and Sky as well. So how have you found things, kind of seeing things from a different perspective? You touched on it a little bit at the top of the show, but I want you to go in more detail in terms of seeing things from behind the screen. Because I was speaking to David Gower on a previous podcast, and he was mentioning when he was working for Sky, he was kind of astonished, amazed by how many people are actually behind the camera to make a show just appear like normal on TV for the viewer at home. So how is that for you? How was that experience?
I think that's the most difficult one. I think you're great until you hear, right, that, you know, 60 seconds till on air or something like that. You think, right, everybody's watching, even though someone might be watching, but you think all these things start to go through your head. But you've got to game face it, and your heart might be beating, you might be sweating in the first one or two that you do, but you've got to just be calm. But I think the moment you go into it, you drop the nerves. You talk about football like you would with your mates, and that's the way I view it. I think one of the things I always try and do is put myself out of my comfort zone. You know, it's that feeling, and I'm very familiar with it now, where you're stretched and your natural reaction is just to pull back in and go, I'm not doing it. Do you know what I mean? I don't want it.
Yeah.
But I know that's the point where you've got to go through with something. You know what I mean? So that's what I do. And you know what? You make mistakes and you learn from them. You know, I did the first time I did co-commentary. I got dogs abuse on Twitter.
Did you?
Yeah, abroad, because it went out abroad. So I was getting people going, who's this guy? He's mank tones and not, you know, what? No one wants to listen to mank tones. No one wants to listen to this. And because you tell people's nerves coming through, and I was nervous, so I was sort of not knowing when to come in, not knowing when to come out. I don't think any, like say, some people master it if that's what you do day in, day out, but it's a very difficult skill. So you're doing it on the radio, and then you're doing it on the TV, and both are very different as well. So all the time you're learning, you end up sometimes copying what the commentator says. I mean, you know, you go to the break and he'll say, well, I describe it. Sorry, I'll say what's happening. You describe why. And you're like, okay. And it's all the different detail that you need to know. But I think we have a unique set, not unique, we have a set of skills that are transitionable from football over to any other industry, and I think one of the biggest things we have is being able to handle pressure and being able to, you know, put yourself into something and back yourself and trust yourself. And you've already been in front of so many people where you've made many mistakes. So what's the worst that can happen? You go out, you make a mistake, you don't get the role. You go out, you do even better, you get the role, you learn. And I'm one, I always want critical feedback. And I think coming from a football background in a dressing room from 20 years ago, where people directly to your face what they think in no uncertainty, there's no grey area, you know what I mean? You know, I've asked for that sometimes when I first started doing TV, and I remember I said it to somebody at BBC, and they went, "Oh no, there's no we won't. There's no criticism here. It's just positive feedback." And I thought,
Okay.
right, that's fine.
Fair enough.
People saying that's rubbish in worse words than that. Not having it, don't fix up, then you're out or you're off or whatever it may be. And it was just brutal to work it out very quickly. So yeah, I just think I've got an ability to deal with pressure, think on my feet. I trust my decisions, which is always something that I think if you don't, I'd prefer to get through something, trust where I've gone and it go wrong, and sit in a grey area and nothing ever happen, because you can always rectify what goes wrong. But you've got to be prepared to sort of have egg on your face and then be bold enough and have broad shoulders enough to go again, really. And I think anything you do on social media, on TV media or radio, you're putting yourself out to criticism. This that we're doing now, some people will listen and go, hate that, what's he doing? How does he know? He's never played here, and why should he do that? And all that kind of thing. And you know what? Such is life. I don't lose any sleep over it.
Yeah, that's exactly my train of thought as well. I've said many times before, like, I mean, to be honest, I'm lucky. I've had some decent feedback from more or less everyone who's kind of seen the shows, which is great. But I take it with a pinch of salt, because you know yourself, you obviously back yourself, like you said, and that's what we've always been told as footballers anyway. You have to back yourself before anyone else even thinks about backing you. So for me, I know my message is a strong one, something I'm passionate about, and hence why I'm doing the podcast. But if someone was to come and say, mate, like, I don't like the way you come across, or I didn't like that guest, or I don't believe in what you're saying, or what's the point of doing it? It's not going to deter me from what I'm doing. It's not going to like discourage me. I'm going to continue doing it. So it's a good point you make. In terms of kind of your career, so obviously, as I mentioned, we'll speak about that, and you did play at a high level, great player as well. In terms of like your transition from playing football week in, week out, day in, day out, from the age of probably 6 or 7 up until retirement, how did you find your transition? Because obviously you were playing football, and then now you're doing kind of 3 or 4 different things, still involved in sport, but from the other side. So how was your transition away from football to doing what you're doing now?
I think it's not an easy transition, but I came to terms with probably my late 20s that I wasn't as good as I knew. I was always a realist, I think, and that wasn't where I could be anymore. And I think injuries are some of the best things that could have happened to me. With that, the disappointment you face when you're injured, and the time you have to think. I did my cruise ship at Portsmouth, and I remember sitting there often in the gym thinking, even when I came back, you're not where you need to be. Your head's doing it, your body's not doing it. So what's your next chapter? Where do you go? You're 30 years old, you're 29, 30 years old. Where do you go? What do you do? So I started to look at other things then. I started to look at football as a whole, and I thought, when you're a footballer, you live in this bubble of you get paid lots of money, your peers are paid a lot of money, you do things accordingly. And I thought to myself, well, in the world we live in, who pays our wages? The club. Who owns the football club? Whoever it may be. How have they earned their money? If you want to continue a certain lifestyle, or you want to be involved in earning again down the line, how have they earned their money? Because we as footballers, even the top footballers, you think if you gave Man City as an example now, the owners far outweigh any form of money that any of the players can earn. Yet any of the players earn far outweighs what every man on the street earns, if you get what I mean. So there's levels to the whole thing. And I just looked at football. I took a step back and had an injury after I left Portsmouth for missed most of the year. And I stepped back and looked at it all. I realised that my phone stopped ringing with a lot of people. And you go, okay, I see that. You're hot and people don't ring in. I knew it was the case because people had always said it. But the reality of it is, oh, right, okay. Yeah. Then when you get football, your phone starts to ring again. And you go, okay, I see you. But I think it's not to take it as personal. It's just you're in the industry or you're not. It is what it is. You're in the game. So my injuries took me to a place where I was about 30, where I thought, right, I've got to educate myself. I'm not stupid, but I've been in this bubble from 10 years old, if you like. So where the rest of the world has an advantage on me is they've left school at 60, maybe gone to uni, experience the real world and how to earn money in the real world and how to be successful in the real world. We don't have that.
Yeah.
So how do I get involved in that so that my transition's as smooth as it can be? So having injuries made me start, you know, I joined LinkedIn about 2010 for argument's sake. I was 28, 29, didn't know what it was, just started exploring it and looking at what it is and speaking to people in different networks, trying to put deals together, trying to understand what people wanted, and I asked questions. And there's probably people on LinkedIn who, throughout the years, who thought, oh, I spoke to him 10 years ago and he didn't have a clue what he was talking about. But that's all. I was in effect an 18-year-old lad, but I was actually 30. By virtue of my network not being in, you know, step out of football, and I'm still a young lad again.
Yeah.
So I had to be prepared to do the years, and you know, football's one of those things. I think if people don't look at the years and the sacrifice you put in to become a first team just to make your debut.
That's it.
You know? People look at you make your debut and they go, "Oh, flipping it, he left school and made his debut, and then he's playing."
Exactly. Yeah.
No? And I think most industries are the same. The successful people don't just walk out and just go, "I'm going to do that and I'm a multimillionaire the next week." It just doesn't work like that unless you fall lucky on something, you know. But rarely does that happen. So I realised that whatever you want to do, you've got to put your mileage in. You've got to be successful. You've got to learn. You've got to be willing to be wrong. And that was a thing of mine. You know, you're always right in your head, like, no, I'm right, but you're not. And be willing to accept that there are points of view that differ from your own, and you can learn from it. And there's a lot of self-development that went on. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I listened to a lot of your Tony Robbins, people like that, and he gave me a different perspective, and just tried to educate myself and taking as much information as I could while still moving forward. And then I tried to get involved in the media at the beginning, and I got people, "Oh, sorry, your profile's not big enough. We've got this man and that man." And I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to be the pundit on BT Sport every Saturday afternoon. I said, you know, I understand my profile. I'm a realist. My profile isn't that. I just want to learn the game. And people are like, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. All right, no thanks. Until certain people went, well, just come and have a look on this one show. Come and do this for free on the radio. And I was like, yeah, come on, let's do it. So I did a lot of free work at the beginning just to experience it, you know, local radio and relative to the football clubs that I'd played for, just to cut my teeth and understand what I was getting into. And then over time, you know, I did more and more, and, you know, became a little bit less wooden, you know what I mean? Because I was wooden and trying to get everything perfect and speak in a way that I didn't speak. You know, it's like you're trying to get every word perfect, and it's not who I am. It's not who I am. I realised that your content's your content, and if people like it, you do, and you're going to rub some people the wrong way. You just can't please everyone. That's just life. So I think, and also one of the best things that happened to me was playing for Salford. You know, joined Salford. It was a sheer chance that I was in the ground on the day that I ended up getting asked to play. And well, again, I was learning the media. I'd done pre-season at Walsall, and I'd left Accrington, done pre-season at Walsall, still hanging on, thinking I could play higher and all that. My head was telling me, yes, it's going, stop it, Webs, stop it. I did pre-season under Dean Smith and Richard O'Kelly, obviously Villa assistant and manager. And I thought they were brilliant, the both of them. I thought they were exceptional. I really did. It was refreshing to be in their environment, the way they gave the responsibility to the players. And I really thought they were good. So I did pre-season, played a few games, couldn't hit the back of the net. That was the reality of it. And Dean Smith pulled me on the day and said, look, you know what, Webbs, you've done great. You've been great around the place, but I can't justify signing a striker that's not scored a goal pre-season. I said, you know what, you bang on, shook his hand and walked away and said, thanks very much. Drove back up the M6 to Manchester. And that night I'd been asked to do, I'd done a few things for Radio Manchester. So I got asked to do a co-commentary for Salford versus, so the Salford team that the class of 92 had built. So they put a team together that summer, and they did a curtain raiser. So the class of 92 and friends, like Jack Whitehall, Michael Vaughan, Robbie Savage, and a few in the class of 92 and a few others. And they played against the Salford team that they just put together that summer. So I did the radio commentary for Radio Manchester on it. It was like a fun game, but it's filled out a stadium. It stopped the traffic. filled out the whole place.
Wow.
I think that was, to go and see Scholesy play and things like that again. There's a lot of emotion attached to it, quite rightly. So I did halftime. I came down and I literally went to go and get a cup of tea, and I saw the dressing room door open. You had to walk past the dressing room at the AJ Bell Stadium, and it was Gary, Giggsy, and they were like, "What are you doing?" I'm just doing the commentary. They went, "Forget the commentary. We come and play for us in the second half. We need some legs."
Yeah.
So, and just by chance, I left Walsall that day, so I had all the boots in the car. So I went to the car, grabbed a pair of boots, and then went out, warmed up, played probably the last 20 minutes of the game. But obviously, I'd done pre-season at Walsall. I was in decent nick, or decent enough. And then in the dressing room afterwards, it was Gary and Scholes just turned around and said, "Webbs, would you play for Salford?" And you're battling with your own ego at that time, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. And I was thinking, oh my God, 8th tier of English football, is that where I am? I'm struggling. And I said, I don't know, maybe, don't know. And he said, "Well, what were you earning at Accrington?" And I said, "Listen, it's not about the money." And they said, "We know that, come and have a look." I said, "All right, fine." Next morning, Gary was on me straight away, and he said, "Look, would you come to Salford?" I said, "You know what, I'll come and have a look." He said, "Come to training. If you hate it, just walk away, no problem, but just come and have a look. I think you'll like it. We're trying to do it the right way. We want to get the club in the right place, and we need, I think you'd really help us." So I did. I went Tuesday night training, turned up in my kit, protein shake, water, ready to go. Some of the lads had been at work all day because it's part-time now, as you say. They'd been at work all day, and one or two had entertained clients, smelling of booze. But the lads were brilliant. They were great. And I saw how Phil Neville turned up at training, took the session. I thought, there's something here that they really, look at the lads, and I know how driven they all are. There's something here, and I quite enjoyed that. So there was a game on the Saturday, and he said, "Listen, play." I didn't have a contract or anything. I said, "Play, walk away when you're ready." Got a couple of games in, and I scored a few goals, and I was enjoying it. And I said, "You know what? I'll sign a contract." So we sat down, we agreed a contract till the end of the season, and then we got promoted the first year. And I thought, I love it. But what I loved is obviously it was enabled me to wean myself off being full time, because you're only training twice. The days in between, I could learn, I could work, I could go to do bits of media for nothing, and just learn basically. But I could still have my fix of what my drug is, which is football. Do you know what I mean? So I did that, and then I remember one of my first games for Salford, and I remember the fans were there right next to you, with corners there and the throw-ins or whatever, and they're right there, and you're giving you stick, and I thought, I like this. And at that point, I realised what a disconnect there was at the top of the game to the fans and to the average guy on the street to what there was at Salford, and I thought, that's me. That's me. That's what I'm from. I'm a normal guy who would stand there and watch a game of football, and it really resonated with me. And I think from that point, I just said, "Yeah, let's sign and I'll crack on." So we did. So my transition was gradual, but I learned while I went to part-time. And then it's funny because I had a lot of people ask me, "What's part-time football like?" It's almost like you have to break the duck a little bit for someone to want to do it, even though they might have wanted to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. I kind of went from there, and I felt I wanted to end it on my terms. We got 2 promotions in 2 years. I was asked to stay, and I just thought, you know what, I know my body's right now. I was lasting about an hour in the game, and then I'd blow up, literally just hit the wind machine. I'd running through trees.
Nah, I understand. I mean, I remember watching the documentary on TV. I actually watched it with my wife, and she doesn't even like football, but she was just intrigued by the whole kind of how it came about and the people at the top and the players and stuff like that. So I remember watching it and seeing you on there, and obviously, for me, it always seemed like, obviously we know about Scholes and kind of Giggs and all those kind of the class of '92 and how good they were, but they came across really professional, and that resonated to the players and on the pitch, and it seemed like a real team ethic, and everyone was kind of in it together. I had that feel about it, and I mean, I've played for some teams kind of within that kind of situation, and it's like it's a real team effort from the top to the bottom. And normally when you're in a situation like that as a team, you tend to perform better because you want to do well for the manager, you want to do well for chairman, your teammates and things like that. So I'm assuming it was pretty much the same at Salford.
Yeah, it was. There was no what I liked about it, there was no barriers between any layer of the football club. So you'd have the chairwoman, Karen Baird, who's been ever present still to this day. Gary would be at games, or Scholes, or Phil, or whoever would be at games. Giggs would come down to games, Nicky Butt as well, and they just got the coats on and watched the game normally. I don't think they expected the football to go as quick as it did, and they got 5 promotions in 4 years. So I think but then off the pitch caught up very quickly because they're driven people. But there were great people at the football club that are still there to this day. The groundsman, the Andy Giblin, the club secretary. I could name loads, and they'd know who they are. And I just got it's a real homely feel. So for transitioning out the game and stepping away slowly from what you love, it couldn't have been a better way to do it for me. Definitely.
You mentioned there, obviously, so you the main reason why you retired from football was through injury, and you had like a few injuries back end of your career. Obviously, you mentioned how you kind of evolved into a pundit and coach, and obviously you're involved in being an agent as well. At that time when you were kind of moving away from football, you're at Salford and you come into the latter stage of your contract and you're thinking, right, I'm ready now. Did you get any help? Because you mentioned like you joined LinkedIn, and obviously it's all about networking and everything else, which is 100% true. But did you get any help kind of from previous managers, any organizations, or previous players that you played with who have maybe made the transition? Did you look to anyone for any help, or did anyone kind of reach out? We've all been there. You mentioned before that the phone stopped ringing when you weren't playing, and obviously when you started again, it started ringing, and that's generally what happens 9 times out of 10 for most players anyway. But did you get any help?
Not necessarily, not from players. I mean, I think by virtue of me reaching out to people, some people were more helpful than others. There were people, I won't say the name because I'd embarrass them. They were good, good people, like even at Man United, who helped me out. And I've told them that since, I was grateful for the help that they gave me at key times where they probably didn't think they did much, but they did. That Radio Manchester were very good. Sarah Collins at Radio Manchester was excellent. She's at Talk Sport now, but she was excellent. Bill Rice at Radio Manchester helped me so much with my, he did a lot of radio comms with me. He gave me a lot of pointers, just gave me a lot of guidelines. He was great. MUTV were brilliant. There was a few in that helped me out. Then in the agency side of things, it was great because I had good people. I knew a lot of people in the game, 1 or 2, like Paolo Vanazza. Paolo's very good at his job. So I joined with Paolo, and Paolo sort of, showed me where he was going and what he was doing and how it worked. So I think I just thought, whichever direction I want to go, I need to align myself with good people. And I think one of the key points I will say is the help is there, but you have to ask. You have to be willing to step up and ask and feel inferior and feel like you don't know anything, feel like you're the new boy in school and go, I don't know, mate. Put your hand up and ask. I'm not saying that there is a group at this moment in time that help every player that transitions out of football. There's not, but I think we have the tools available to us when we're transitioning out of the game, not to sit back and rest on our laurels and look at our loss, more what can we gain and how can we learn. And I think if you adopt that approach, you'll be able to transition out and find where you sit. You will spend a couple of years off balance. I think that's natural. It's natural because it's new. It's new, and you second guess whether you've made the right decision to do this and do that. But by making a decision, you get to where you need to be, because you can always change direction. But I think the problem a lot of people face is the indecisiveness of not knowing what to do. So you sit in that not knowing. And I know a lot of friends that have done the same thing, and they go, well, what am I going to do? I go, try something. What are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? What do you enjoy? What have you ever been intrigued about? What do you like? Go and do something. If you like property, well, go and do something in property. By virtue of being in the mix, go and do a property course. You might meet somebody on a property course who says, I like you. You've got contacts that you don't know about just yet. I'll mentor you, And when we're at a stage and you exercise, you know, your contacts, okay, you've learned, you've done something you're passionate about, and then all of a sudden, but what people I think expect is to finish earning thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a week, walk into something that's going to pay you exactly the same, but you're not upskilled in that area to be earning that money. And there's very few players that have the profile, you know, your Rios and people like that, and that level of player that can just walk into TV and earn millions on a, you know, and have an operation in place that continues to make money for them. It's just not the case. You've either got to be bold enough to do it yourself, or find the people around you and ask them for your help. Because people are okay to help, but you find sometimes people are semi-intimidated by you, so they don't offer the help. So you actually drop your barriers and say, you know what, can you help me with that? You know, be willing to look stupid, because you'll find you know more and you pick up more by dropping your barriers.
Some good points, great insight, and I kind of agree with everything you said there. I always say, look, if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. Sometimes as a player, you don't realise how big your network is. Even if you played like at the lower leagues, you've still got a network of people that you can call upon, people that you've come across or played against. So again, we've mentioned LinkedIn, and that's massive. Someone a lot older than me told me a couple of years ago, well, a few years ago, like join LinkedIn. And I'm late on the scene with social media, and I know LinkedIn's kind of different from Instagram and things like that, but it's still a social media platform essentially. And I was reluctant because I thought, well, I've got a job, I don't really need to go on LinkedIn. I wasn't on Instagram or Facebook, and I've only just joined Instagram and Facebook kind of the last few months since I've been doing a podcast. I'm kind of a private person, but something like a podcast, you need to be out there. People want to see your face, and I know what it's like. When you're speaking to people with like a profile like yourself or whatever, obviously we know each other. I mean, we'll touch on that, but people, if they don't know you, they probably won't trust you anyway, especially footballers. They always have their guard up to a certain degree because someone's always trying to sell you something, and that's just how it is. So for me, when I get someone on the show, and people say, oh, like, how did you get Danny Webber on, or how did you get David Gower on? It's like, well, I just asked. For every person I get on, there's probably 20 that haven't responded to me. That's just how it is. So if people are busy, you're busy, doesn't mean you're ignoring me, you're just busy. That's just how it is. So for anyone listening out there, it's about asking the question. Like you said, don't be scared to put yourself out there, because no one's really going to come out and reach out to you unless you've got a profile which is attractable to them anyway. If you're someone who's just played football, no one really cares. It's a talking point in the bar, and that's basically it. Unless you're Rio Ferdinand or Beckham or Giggs or someone like that, it's not really going to be given to you on a plate. And even then, I mean, these players, not all of them have been given the opportunity, and some of them have tried and failed or whatever, and it may not suit them. But when you've got a platform, it's slightly easier, as you know. You've obviously come across people who have got a major platform, and you played with kind of some of the most high-profile players in the world. But yeah, I mean, I want to touch on your career. So we first met kind of 14, 15 years of age, and for the listeners out there, FA National School, which is now defunct, basically it's like a massive, I don't know, Edwardian building in Shropshire, and that's where we used to kind of board essentially the best kind of 15, 16 players in the country between the ages of 14 and 16. Two age groups, so you have seniors, juniors, and obviously when I was there, I was a senior and you were my junior. So, I mean, for me, I really enjoyed it. I know it's probably not the same for everyone else. I spoke to Reece the other day and Stuart Taylor, and spoke to people in the past, and kind of, you know, it's like you move away from home at the age of 14, really, really young. I mean, my daughter's 11, so a few years after that, I would have been leaving home, and I look at her and I think, how did I even like contemplate doing it? But I didn't really think twice. How did you find your experience? Because obviously, I mentioned leaving home, new teammates, new surroundings, different part of the country, playing and training kind of day in, day out. What was it like for you?
I loved it. I loved it. We had a great group of lads, and I think that helps if your surroundings and the people that you spend your time with are decent. But no, I loved it. I would have done anything for football, you know. So if somebody would have said to me, "You're going to the back end of Russia and you're going to live there for 2 years," I'd have done it. you know, that's how it was. So to think that you're playing with, at that moment in time, the best 16/32 players in the country, day in, day out, was only ever going to improve me as a player. I learned a lot about myself. You go from inner city Manchester, where you're cocky and you've got a lot to say for yourself, and you then step into rural Shropshire. You're like, wow, what's going on here? You know, as you say, we went to the local school that we were liked by the women and not by the men. Do you know what I mean? So we had a bit of conflict there. So you know, you realise that your teammates are your brothers, and you got to back each other when it's needed. So you learn a lot about yourself. You can't just go home to your mum and your dad and ask them and say, "Oh, this happened," because they're not there. You know, so you know what it's like sitting on the corridor. We didn't have mobiles, most of the lads at that, until maybe late on. And we're sitting on the payphone, we're waiting, you check if the payphone free, no, flipping out, you've got to wait for the payphone. So even contact to get home wasn't as frequent. I mean, we used to get mail, you'd have almost, you'd have to write letters to people, and people would write letters to you, and you'd be buzzing to get a bit of mail. So it's mad, but that's how it was. But I enjoyed it because the football was good and the lads were very good. It gave me a focus, and I was already used to changing schools, and I'd been to 5 primary schools, and so I was quite normal to me to just jump into another school and be like that. The thing I found hard was joining a group of lads, all came from different backgrounds, and I saw that some of my brash sort of Mancunian way was a bit too much for certain lads. And it's funny, it was just because I was gobby, you're gobby. I don't know if you. I'd always give it a little bit. So I'd found that even some of my own teammates, like I'd stay up at night with Leon Mike. You know, it went to his room and play computer, but we'd have Nobes was in that room. Nobes was fine, but then there was like Chris McCready, who's now works at Man United. And Maka was very studious, amazing guy, but very studious. And I think I just rubbed him up the wrong way for the first bit. He does go, "Webbs, are you going to go to bed now?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm playing computer." And I was just in my world, and I didn't consider, consider. But I learned very quickly when you're in the group, how to find your balance again, I think. So, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
And to be honest, I think for me, it was way ahead of its time. Because we were training every day, as you mentioned, so the best players in the country, essentially. Keith Blunt was the coach, great coach, hard taskmaster, but I learned so much when I was there. And for me, it was, I don't know if it was the same for you, but in my area, kind of Midlands, Warwickshire, and kind of surrounding areas, you're always classed as like the best or one of the best, and never really had any issues kind of getting in the team and scoring. I used to be a striker until I went to Lillishall, and I got stuck out on the left, just because we had Francis Jeffers, Alan Smith up front, Paul Wheatcroft, so ridiculous talent. So for me, when I went there, and I realised, look, there's a different level here, because I just used to rely on my pace. I didn't really have much game understanding. I could finish, could run past players. I was skillful, technical. But when I went there, and I realised there was like a different level. We had Scott Parker, who was pure technical player. Game understanding was ridiculous. A lot bigger players. I mean, me and you were small anyway, and obviously you were a year below me anyway. But in terms of me, I mean, Stuart Taylor, if you remember, he was like grown men, like 6'3". It's just like, and obviously he was a goalkeeper, and we had like Matthew Gent, who was like a man, again, Lee Cannaville, again, over 6 foot. So a lot of the players were a lot bigger than me, and I was always used to playing against bigger players anyway, because I've always been small. But it was just the level of understanding and realizing kind of, okay, well, we're training after school. So we go to school, come home, train every day, and then play. But for me, the most enjoyable part was always playing, because we were so good that we were so confident without being cocky. And every game we played, we just knew we were either going to win or come away with kind of a situation where we should have won, but we didn't, because we were just so good. And I remember your year was a really good year, and obviously you had Joe Cole and people like yourself, Leon Mike, Clarkey, ridiculous talent, Torpy, Armstrong. So you had a. That's just to name a few. You had a really good team. But yeah, so then obviously you leave Lillishall and then you start your apprentice as an apprentice at Man United. So what was it like working with kind of Alex Ferguson? on a daily basis. Obviously, in the youth team, you wouldn't have been in contact with him that much, but just seeing and being in his presence and knowing that you're playing for what the biggest club in the world, essentially. What was it like to obviously pull on the shirt and train every day?
I think he set the tone for the whole football club. So he set the standard, he set the culture. So even if you're not working with him day in, day out as a 16-stroke 17-year-old, you were held to his standard by the coaches that were around him. And I still think the best coach I ever had, day in, day out, was Neil Bailey. He was my under 17s, as it was then, coach. Still speaking to this day. He's a legend. Straight talking, knew what he wanted from you, helped you improve, demanded from you every single day. But for me, my transition into that was so smooth because we finished Lillyshaw and we come straight off the back of going to a tournament in the States, and we were just into pre-season. So I found pre-season quite easy, whereas other lads finished school and really struggled with pre-season, but we'd already had a level of fitness. So I think the first year I found it quite easy, and I scored about 17 goals in my first 12 games. And I was flying, and then I got injured, which was the story of a lot of my career. But working under Sir Alex, he'd always keep you in check. One of the only people that ever would walk into a room and it would just silence a room, no matter how big the characters were in the room. He just pushed the place, not even trying to, but just his mere presence would do that. Little things like, we had to do jobs back then. So obviously the young lads don't have to do them anymore. We had jobs around the place, cleaning boots and washing balls and cleaning the gym and showers and all that sort of stuff. And he'd always maintain that, you do your jobs to such a high standard. And I remember he used to go in the gym. He'd go, right, 3 of you come with me, and he'd take you into the gym at the Cliff once in a while, and he'd pull the heaviest machine out and then do that. And if there was any dust on it, he'd be fuming. He'd say, right, get in there and clean the whole thing. Knowing full well that no 2 lads could ever lift that machine by themselves. But it was a lesson about standards and, disciplines and making sure that you did things right. So I couldn't have had a better upbringing if I'm honest. Whether I was to go on and play 300 games or 3 games for Man United, my upbringing really helped me at that football club to go on and have any form of career. And even to the point where twice in my career I needed help, I knocked on his door and he was like, yeah, listen, come in, this is your home. I'll tell everybody you're here, and you're going to use that. I'll tell the physios you need them. I'll tell the whoever it is you're training, get yourself back and we'll get you up and running again. So I'm forever grateful to Sir Alex for his standard setting, his disciplines, his teachings to me as an individual, and obviously his humility and his openness to let me come in at certain times and rebuild when you're going through a bit of a crap time in the middle of your career.
Yeah, and obviously, so when you were there, talking kind of 1999, 2000, 2001, obviously Giggs, Beckham, Scholes, Nicky Butt, Wes Brown, players like that, kind of. I'm assuming. So when you were there, I'm assuming you trained with the first team at some point. What was it like to train with them and just raising your game and just thinking? Because obviously, as players, sometimes you don't. Well, me certainly, when I was playing with kind of at Leicester, say Emil Heskey and Robbie Savage and people like that, you don't appreciate your surroundings. So without being arrogant, you're used to being in that surrounding. So when you're training with them, it's kind of, okay, well, they're my teammates, or they're in the first team and I'm in the reserve, but I'm training with them today. It's not until you kind of retire and like someone will ask you the question, what was it like to train with them? And then you realize actually it was quite tough, or really enjoyable, or learning curve, or whatever, or an achievement. So what was it like for you? Because it's not normal. Obviously, you're at United and you're playing with these players who are household names, even to this day, and some of them obviously ain't even playing anymore, and they're still household names. So what was it like? What was the experience like for you as a young boy?
It was massive in a lot of ways. I think Yorkie and Coley were 2 that I really looked up to. Yorkie signed in the summer that I started my YT, which was obviously the treble winning year. So I've come out of Lillyshaw and we go into United going to winning the treble. So I look at Teddy was brilliant, Ollie was brilliant. They all had different styles and played in my position. And I learned a lot. So I'm talking, I'd always, even if we finished training and we trained long, I'd go out and we'd come back in and we trained at Littleton Road, come back to the cliff, and they'd have the balls out with Brian Kidd or Steve McLaren, whoever it was, just practicing the technique. They're finishing, day in, day out. Beckham with his free kicks. Gary Neville used to practice his body shape and, defending, that kind of thing. And I realised a lot of what these lads have got is drive, determination, and the will to maximise what they are. It was amazing. It was brilliant. Tough in one sense, because you look at, as a 16-year-old, you come in and you think, I want to be in the first team. But then you look and you go, you mentioned Wheatcroft before, there was Wheaty, there was Fitz, there was David Healy, there was one or two others that played in the year, just the 2 years above me, Alex Notman, a Scottish international.
Yeah.
Then you go higher than that in the reserves. And United have bought John Greening, who played up front sometimes then as well.
Yeah.
And then they had other lads like a guy called Jamie Wood and other lads. There's probably about 8 players before I got to York, Coles, Sheringham, Shawshack. Jordi Cruyff would play up front. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you look at it, you think, you just got to have that belief that you'll just keep ploughing through. You'll just get through it. And when your time's right, you'll get in and just keep going and scoring your goals. And I was relentless. I scored so many goals at 17s and then 19s. And then I made my debut at 18 at the Stadium of Light in front of 40,000 or whatever it was. And that was like, wow. But the United machine just kept going on. People didn't have time then to sit and appreciate anything. You weren't allowed to sit and appreciate where you were. You were just like, okay, you've done that next. Done that. Okay, you scored 5 on Saturday. So what next? What's happening Monday morning? It was like you were never allowed to sit back and relax and look at anything you'd achieved, no matter how big or small it was. And I think that came from the first team. I've heard some first team lads say that they won so many titles, and over the time they kind of never celebrated them because you were allowed a night or two, and then it was like, right, next season we do better again. So the atmosphere was relentless. It was relentless, and many people fall by the wayside as a result of it, and that's from top to bottom. It's natural. Good players I saw come in and really struggle. When you're looking at the first team, they really struggled with the demands of not just the manager, the demands of the players around them. Roy Keane demanded every single day, but you could never look at him and say, well, you know what, Roy, something to you, because he was on his job every day without fail. Without fail. So there was never a bone you could pick. And I go around the whole squad, and that's why it was so good. I get to, you sort of make other appearances, and as you're coming through, you go on loans and that kind of thing, and you just realise that the magnitude of the task. And at that time, United never brought strikers through. They had David Healy, who was playing full international football at 17, 18. He got in and then sold, and it was like, if you ever had any few games, you were sold, kind of thing, as a striker at United. Just that way. They was brought in the strikers being the key position. They brought in the specialists to come in and finish. You know what I mean? Yeah. Cool. So this Roy came in, and it was like, flipping heck, this guy's a joke. Forlan came in and struggled at the beginning, but played a lot in the resis with him. But then found his feet. And I think you're afforded that time to find your feet when people have paid money for you. Cool. Of that level of opportunity when you come through the youth system anywhere. That's not just Man United. I think it's most places.
Wow, I mean, that must have been a mad experience. But so, I mean, still on your career, you've left United now, and you've kind of made a name for yourself at Watford, Sheffield United, and that's where you kind of became established. You also played for the England and 20s as well. So, I mean, how did you find leaving United and then not having to start again, but kind of having to prove yourself? Because you still had a name, you still had some clout about you. People knew who you were because obviously how good you were. So how did you find stepping away from the demands of United, but then you went to say Watford and Sheffield United, and there was a different type of demand on you? How was that process?
It was emotionally initially hard because I turned down 3 years. That third year that Sir Alex had offered me at 21, turned down a 3-year contract, and I just thought I've done the right thing, but I did it because I wasn't playing as much football as I needed, and I needed to play. I wanted to forge a career to make sure as a minimum I had a career. I didn't want to be still sat playing in the reserves as you could have been then, and all of a sudden you just fall by the wayside. So I put immense pressure on myself to perform once I'd done that. Probably too much pressure at times. The last game I played for United, I'd broken my leg. So I left United with a metal plate in my leg, having not played since I'd broken it. Yeah, normally you'd have a few games to come back. So and I joined. That was it. I nearly joined Forest under Paul Hart. Paul Hart took me in. He had the team with David Johnson, Genus, Prutton, Marlon Harewood. He had a good side together. And he went. I need you in as like the missing piece of the jigsaw. But I decided to go to Watford because it was familiar. I'd already had 2 loan spells. I was comfortable there, and I enjoyed my time there. They were great. But my first year was horrible. Jimmy died. Jimmy Davis came on loan. So at the time we got offered contracts 3 years each. I turned mine down. He signed his. I signed for Watford. He came on loan to Watford anyway. So we still went as a pair. We played through the youth together all the way through. And he fortunately died in a car crash the day before the opening day of the season. So that weighed heavy on me without me knowing it. And then on top of that, I've got a metal plate that I'm playing with in my leg that it was agony all the time. And you're trying to be a man, and you're trying to brave it, and you're trying to game face it. Every time you get kicked on that metal plate, you just, you want to lose your mind because it's horrible, but you're still playing and people are watching and people are judging. Plus, you've got United, so everyone expects you to score 55 goals in one season and be that guy. And you don't moan. You don't moan. You just don't moan. You get on with it, and So first season was tough. Second season, and at the end of that season, I went away and blew off a bit of steam. I went to Vegas. I went to wherever else I went to and partied, and I spent a bit of time with the family. But then June the 1st came, and I was like, right, I'm on it. Now I'm going to train every single day. And it was probably a bit before people trained in the summer. People might do a week before they came back. I did the whole trained, and I got myself in good condition. I thought, I'm not going to let that happen again. I went in pre-season, set off that season, scored 9 in my first 7 games in the Championship, and I was flying. At the time, the likes of Nathan Ellington, Jason Roberts were at Wigan that year. They had a good side, Jimmy Bullard, Leighton Baines, that sort of side. West Ham had Ted Sheringham, Matthew Etherington, Harewood, so there was some good strikers, but I was flying. And then it got to the point where I just did my shoulder, and I was out again. And I was like, oh, mate. Scored another sort of 7 or 8 goals that season, and then I went on loan to Sheffield United under Neil Warnock. Enjoyed playing under Neil. I thought he was brilliant for me. He let me just have the freedom to go and do what I wanted on the football pitch, which was great. Ray Lewington was similar. I enjoyed playing under Ray Lewington. He was good as well. But Neil gave me the freedom, and he had an ambition that was relentless. He's like, we're going to get promoted. So I was like, right, okay, I'm in. That's what I needed to hear because I wanted to get back to the Premier. Spent time at Sheffield United, 4 years, 1.5 good at the beginning. Then we got relegated from the Premier League back down. 2 years after that, we're indifferent under different managers, but loved playing at Bramall Lane and really got a great feeling of being there. All of it in between, I'm having operations, I'm having injuries. I've had all throughout my career, I had 14 operations spread across the whole thing. So it adds up. It adds up, and I think every one of them just chips away at you a little bit. Takes at the end of it. And especially when you play the way I used to play, you're cutting around everywhere, you're sharp, you're quick, and just sometimes you're playing in pain and people don't know it. I probably went through my mid-20s taking tablets every day, and I'd dose up for games. I'd take 2 painkillers, 2 paracetamol and an anti-inflammatory before games, so I didn't feel any pain in my body, and I didn't have the inflammation in my body. And I was just going through taking that. And that wasn't even the doctors giving it to me. I was just sort of like, you find a way to get anti-inflammatories and you take them just to make sure that you're okay, you weren't feeling pain. I strapped my shoulders every single day. I would dislocate both my shoulders. I had them both operated on. My shoulders, lads laughed at me, used to say, oh, Robocop, because I'd go in, the physio would strap them up. And then tear it off. That orange tape, that copper tape, that I'd pull it off and it would make my skin bleed, and I'd do it the next day and the next day and the next day, and it strap my shoulders. So you realise what you want. If you want it that badly, you're willing to run through brick walls. But sometimes, I think later down the line, you know it's to your detriment, because my missus says to me, like, sometimes, flipping heck, how old are you? When I get out of bed and walk to the shower in the morning, but then I get in the magic shower and I'm like magic again. I'm all right.
Wow, that's massive. I mean, congratulations for your career. I mean, obviously, it's one of them where you kind of, when you've been to Lillishall, you kind of follow everyone's career and stuff. And I followed you, and obviously did really well. Always were a good player. In terms of we're going to kind of touch on the end now. You mentioned obviously retirement, you touched on your career and stuff like that, and obviously what you're currently doing now. I always ask the question to kind of everyone that comes on the show, or try to anyway. Do you think more help's needed for athletes? So I'm talking, okay, football, because we've both played, so naturally we're going to talk about football, but talking all sports. So on a generic form, tennis, swimming, cricket, athletics, whatever it may be, we always hear these stories about kind of athletes struggling to make the transition or whatever, fall into kind of depression, mental health issues, which can be a cause of not knowing what you're going to do after you've retired. Do you think more help's needed, whether it be from an organisation or kind of workplace placements or whatever it may be?
I do, but I think it's not just a case of someone setting up an organisation and them being the go-to and then that's it. I think it starts earlier than that. And I mentioned Chris McCready before. He's doing some really good stuff at Man United.
Yeah, I've read some of his stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he looks at the person as a whole. You know, he encourages you to explore things you're interested in. You know, we were brought up in a time where it was solely about football. Forget everything else. Just focus on your football and the mandatory college work that you did, and that was it. And you got through it and cracked on. Whereas if you do have an interest in property, then sit back and learn about it. You know, if you have an interest in being a DJ, then you know what, get your decks at home and enjoy your music. There's explore you yourself as a person more than that. So I think it starts from that age, as opposed to doing it when someone's at the back end, when the pressure's on and time seems to be, you know, when they've got a family behind them and they're going, I've got pressure here and I don't know what to do, because a lot of people don't make clear decisions when they're under pressure. So yes, I think there's a huge need for it, but it's not just one organisation. That tends to happen in football, where it's, you know, they're the people you go to for racism, they're the people you go to for your, and it's not that. It's a holistic approach across. There's like a readdress that needs to happen on the whole of football, where people think about the person, because you look at a lot of foreign footballers have that mentality. They enjoy things outside of football. You know, they have passion outside of football, and it's encouraged. It was only here back in the day that it wasn't. But what I do like to see now is the likes of, you know, certain people now who have gone, well, I'm setting up a clothing line, you know, and I'm not saying for like to distract you from your football, but you know, you look at Marvin Morgan, he set up Fresh Ego Kid, done really well. Barbara stepped away from football because he's got Manier Devoir, another clothing line, something they were passionate about, and it's another avenue for them to pursue and have very successful careers in. And they're just two to name a few. And I'm not, clothing line isn't for everybody because it will distract some people, but I'm just talking about fulfilling your passion, whatever it may be. And there need to be people within football clubs who say, what else are you interested in? What do you like doing? Well, I'll tell you what, how about we'll put this on for you. You know, if you're interested in cooking, well, I'll tell you what, we'll get a chef in. Do you want to do a bit of cooking? How about we do something, you know, make it fun, make learning fun so that people can explore themselves.
Definitely, I agree with that 100%. I definitely agree with the fact that there needs to be more of a broader approach to kind of transitioning as such, and it needs to start from a younger age, and it needs to be integrated to make it the norm, because everyone's got an interest. And sometimes I think as footballers, people are scared to come out. I was never scared to come out. So for me, when I was going to games, going in the hotel or whatever, I'd take a book because I used to like reading. So for me, I still read to this day, and it's not, I don't read fantasy or whatever. I just read like factual books. That's just me. And no one ever said anything to me. Whether that was my personality, they probably knew that it wouldn't affect me. But I've seen people shy away from stuff. Even you mentioned Marvin Morgan. I can't remember the team that he was playing for. He just signed, and I remember him, I think it was a podcast he was talking on recently. And the gaffer was just going around kind of talking to the players, and he said, oh, like, what have you been doing, or what are you actually doing? And he said something about kind of, oh, I've got this like clothing line I'm thinking about setting up. And he shut him down and said, just concentrate on your football. Now, this is recent. This has happened in the last few years, because Marvin Morgan's like our generation. So it's still happening to this day. And I remember growing up, and managers, coaches would say, look, just concentrate on your football. Everything else is a distraction. It's not always the case. The stats are there to show that if you've got an interest outside of your chosen sport, which is not a hindrance to your performance, it's gonna enable you to perform better on the pitch. The stats are there. So for me, if you've got something where it's stats driven and the stats can show that, okay, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll get potentially this result. You can't really argue with it. So for me, it's massive what you just mentioned there. In terms of transferable skills, what have you taken? So this is you within your own psyche now. Like, what have you taken from football and playing football on a daily basis from the age of, I think, 9 or 10 you mentioned, into what you're doing now? So MUTV, Skywork, BBC, behind the camera, coaching, liaising with players, football teams, obviously your agency work and things like that.
I think communication's one. You know, you learn to communicate with your teammates. You understand what team, you know, you're part of a team. You've always been part of a team, so you understand how to work with people. Demand from yourself within that role and identify your role. I think there's a drive that you have to play at that level, and that can be transferred into any arena. Surround yourself with the right people, just the same as you would in a football club, and put your drive into that, and you know you can find success. I think critical thinking and being resilient at the same time. You know, you being able to think on your feet, being willing to get things wrong, which you know you do. You take a shot in football, you miss. Okay, well, I've been willing to get it wrong. By willing to get something wrong, you'll eventually get it right. So those I do relate a lot of my life to football because football is what I know. But I've also, you know, and that's it. So I kind of go, if I was on a pitch or if I was in football, how would this whole thing pan out? And I think just to back yourself, you know, you've got to back yourself against all odds. How many times, Danny, as a kid, does somebody turn around to you and say, "Oh, you won't make it," or when they put their fears on you, you know, "Oh, you'll never make it." You know how hard it is to make it. You know what? Yeah, you probably won't make it. All right, well, take your fears and go over there, mate. You know what I mean? Because that's not. I don't need that in my space. And you couldn't go into a football pitch with it. There would be no one in your team who would go, "Tell you what, lads, you know, let's go out there because we're probably not going to win." But it's just not in your nature. You go out there to win. So you've got that desire and that will to win that you transfer as well. And I just think educating yourself, putting all that into something that you're passionate about can only be successful if you're committed to it.
Brilliant, mate. Great insight. Once again, thanks for coming on. I always like to get people to obviously promote kind of what they're doing now. So you obviously know about MUTV, that's kind of self-explanatory, as is Sky and the BBC. But in terms of your agency work, just let us know where people can find you, the name of it, and obviously.
Yeah. Well, I've recently just rebranded and everything, so everything will come up. My agencies will come up. I'll send it to you. It's called Autograph Sports Management. It'll be on Instagram at Autograph Sport, but it'll be up and running probably in the next couple of weeks. You'll see all the new visuals will be there. So yeah, fantastic. Good to see you, Danny. Looking trimmer than ever.
Mate, to be honest, I don't go to the gym. I don't do running or anything. I just think I'm one of those lucky people who don't really have to do exercise. But yeah, you're looking well yourself. Like I said, we haven't spoke for years, and it's great to have you on the podcast. I know how busy you are, and it sounds like you're doing great things. All I can do is wish you the best of luck. Try and keep in touch as well. People always say this, but obviously we're getting older now. Obviously, everyone's more mature and stuff, and we're both on LinkedIn, and that's how we obviously spoke in order to get you on the show. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, good luck, and we'll keep in touch going forward.
Top man, Danny. Good to see you. Take care. Good luck with everything.
Cheers, mate. See you soon.
Take care.